The Beatles, the band that became a global legend, were not only a milestone in music history, but also a reflection of the cultural and spiritual changes of the 1960s. The spiritual journey of each member led them to explore various philosophies, religions, and practices. This quest for deeper meaning not only influenced their music, but also transformed the way they viewed the world and their own existence. In this script, we will explore how spirituality was a central theme in the lives and careers of John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr. 1. The initial search for something deeper. Early years. In the early years of their career, the Beatles were primarily focused on fame, success, and fun. However, even during this period, there were signs that something deeper was beginning to take shape. Songs like Let It Be, 1970, reflected a sense of resignation and the search for inner peace, themes that would later be more fully developed. John Lennon and Paul McCartney, as the main songwriters, began reflecting on deeper issues. While Paul was more introspective, seeking meaning through art, John began to question the life and values that had previously guided his existence. 2. The influence of Guru Maharishi, 1967. By 1967, the Beatles had reached a point where they were looking for something more meaningful than the superficial success of fame. Their trip to India in search of spiritual answers became one of the most defining moments in their journey. India, with its rich spiritual traditions, offered the band members an opportunity for reflection and personal growth. Guru Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, known for popularizing transcendental meditation in the West, became a central spiritual figure for the Beatles during this period. They spent several months at his ashram in Rishikesh, India, seeking inner peace and self-awareness. For John Lennon and George Harrison, transcendental meditation marked a turning point. George, in particular, became deeply drawn to Hindu philosophy, and India became an integral part of his spiritual journey. The lyrics of Within You, Without You, 1967, from their Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album, clearly reflected his new spiritual beliefs. The song speaks of the interconnectedness of all beings and the quest for a higher level of consciousness.
3. George Harrison's spiritual evolution. George Harrison was the band member who most fully embraced and integrated spirituality into his life and music. His search for truth and wisdom led him not only to India, but also to a deep connection with Eastern mysticism, which would profoundly influence his songwriting and worldview. The song My Sweet Lord, 1970, is one of the most significant examples of George's spiritual transformation. It expresses a yearning for the divine, a desire to connect with God. Harrison's spiritual quest was not limited to Hinduism. He was also influenced by Christianity and other religious philosophies. He became an advocate for meditation and spirituality, and this search continued throughout his solo career. 4. John Lennon and his personal philosophy. While John Lennon was more skeptical and critical of gurus and organized religions, his spiritual journey manifested in a unique way. After the trip to India, he began to take a deeper interest in Eastern philosophy, but he also sought answers within himself. His spiritual approach was less about devotion and more about internal understanding and a rejection of societal hypocrisy. The song Imagine, 1971, perhaps his most famous, reflects his utopian vision of a world where spiritual and ideological barriers are dissolved. Lennon believed that true peace could only be achieved if people abandoned divisive beliefs and saw humanity as one. His philosophy was about transcending the ego and materialism. While Lennon's skepticism kept him from identifying with a specific religion, his quest for truth and peace was profound. His lyrics, such as in Give Peace a Chance, 1969, captured his belief in a better world guided by spiritual principles of love and harmony. 5. Ringo Starr, The Path of Balance. Ringo Starr, while often seen as the more laid-back and pragmatic member of the Beatles, also had his own spiritual journey. He became involved with transcendental meditation alongside the other band members, and after the band's breakup, he continued to seek inner balance. Ringo was influenced by the philosophies of peace and love, and his spiritual journey reflected a search for simplicity and harmony. Although his spiritual experiences were not as public or intense as George's or John's, Ringo also sought peace within himself, especially through meditation. His solo music, such as the song Photograph, 1973, suggests a quiet reflection on life and the search for meaning in simple things. 6. The influence of spirituality on the Beatles' final works. As the Beatles distanced themselves from the life of pop stars and embraced more spiritual themes, their music reflected these changes. The White Album, 1968, features songs that touch on spiritual matters, such as While My Guitar Gently Weeps, George Harrison, and Revolution, John Lennon, which, although politically motivated, also reflect a desire for inner change. Abbey Road, 1969, their final major album, contains spiritually infused moments like the aforementioned Here Comes the Sun, Harrison, which carries a sense of renewal and illumination. The iconic The End also symbolizes the search for closure and inner peace, with its final refrain reflecting the idea that love is the answer to everything. Conclusion: the spiritual legacy of the Beatles. The spiritual legacy of the Beatles is profound and multifaceted. Through their music, travels, and philosophical explorations, they sought answers to life's most essential questions. Each member followed a unique path, but all were marked by the search for meaning, peace, and love. Their spiritual journey not only transformed their lives, but also influenced generations of listeners around the world. The Beatles left an unparalleled musical legacy, but they also showed how the search for spirituality can manifest in art, music, and life. They proved that true revolution does not only happen in the external world, but also within the heart of each human being.